Hello, my name is Stefan Lewis. I'm a mental health counselor here in Cary, North Carolina, and I'm in a blended family. Do you ever get the feeling that when you're in a blended family that you're part of this unwritten support group? See, I remember when I was younger seeing my parents, and they were married for 50 years before they passed away, and just thinking to myself, I can't wait to be part of a blended family. Did that ever happen to you? Of course not. We all had thoughts of getting married and living happily ever after, just like the Disney movies. But unfortunately, 50% of first marriages end in divorce, and some end due to a spouse becoming a widow. Second marriages are less successful, according to statistics. But the thing that gets missed and overlooked in blended families are the incredible opportunities that can happen. Don't get me wrong, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, as blended families all have different types of challenges. I remember going through my divorce and how hard it was to think I could even move forward and who would even want to meet someone like me. I thought, for lack of a better term, I was damaged goods who would want someone that is divorced and has a child. I kind of forgot there are also 50% of the population that could be looking for someone just like me. So I was fortunate enough to find someone that I actually met a few times over 20 years ago in college. We met and then we went our separate ways as I was graduating and she was just starting as a freshman. But thanks to the wonderful world of social media, we reconnected and we started to talk. Through that, I noticed she was having a bad day, and I didn't really know why because I hadn't really talked to her in about 15 years at that time. So I asked if she wanted to hang out one night. I didn't think it was a date, but I guess in the back of my mind, I was hoping it could be a date. And now 6 years later, here we are, still learning how to work through some of the blended family challenges as well. We've also learned to love and appreciate the life we've built together. So our children are very different ages. When we met, mine was finishing middle school. Her daughter was starting preschool. And now we have a college daughter, a fourth grader, and a kindergartner. And when people ask if we planned our children that way, I respond with, no, this is what God gave us as a blended family. See, they're all my children, but when we describe it, there's a mine, a hers, and an ours. And the greatest gift that we've been able to give our children through all of this is another sibling that they would have never had if we were not together. So yeah, there were growing pains, but over the years we have found our rhythm. And that's a big part of what makes things successful with us. As both of us as parents understand there's another parent. Although we may have certain feelings towards the other parent that's not in our family, we also understand that the biological parents are the main people deciding things when big topics come up. In our family, if there's a question or concern that involves both households, we talk about it. We come up with what works for our family and what works for our home. And then we discuss that idea, or she would discuss that idea to the other parent, and then we work together towards a common idea. And this can be hard because it makes the other person feel that what the two of you agreed on isn't good enough because the decision is different. So there are a lot of humbling times when what works best may not be agreed upon by the other biological parent. And then the decision is made by the biological parents, and the step parents can feel left out, or maybe they're not as important. So this is one area that can cause distress in blended families. There are many different ways blended families work towards coming up with solutions. But in our family, we have always felt it was primarily up to the biological parents. But we would discuss all the decisions with each other and ask for input before talking with the other parents. Raising a family, blended or not blended, is hard. When we talk like our childhood, we bring those things that feel comfortable and that we try to incorporate how we grew up and how our partner was raised. But in blended families, you have up to 4 different views on how a child should be raised. Plus now you have new in-laws that will give input. So that's a lot of people trying to help make a decision for a child. That's why we try to keep everything within our 4 walls, and that seems to work for us. Now, all decisions are not big decisions, but all decisions affect both families. If one family wants them to play a sport, you would need to check to see if that other family is able to provide support or transportation on those days that they have their child. So if soccer is every Saturday, depending on the custody agreements, you may need to check to make sure that the child has a way to soccer every weekend. Another challenge is the overall level of communication that goes on between each household. It may sound like this is a conversation regarding divorce, and well, you're kind of right. Without divorce, you wouldn't be in a blended family. So our family was a little different. We had one daughter that went between houses every other week. Another daughter goes every other weekend to their other house, occasionally for weeks during track out times. And the other one is just stuck with us, but she sometimes does say that she wants to go to another house. We hope it's just because her sisters get to leave and not because it's us. So each time there's a transition, communication is the key. If one parent does not let the other parent know what happened during the week, then that can set their child up for failure. If, for example, during a weekend, one child gets hurt on a swing, but they love swings, that's their favorite activity, then a transition happens and you ask them to go to a park to swing, that child may be triggered and not want to go, but the parent doesn't know. So everything is important. What if a child develops an allergy while they are at the other parent's house and that isn't communicated? So there are many different things that can happen which can be prevented and set your child up for success with the other parent. And no matter how you feel, it needs to be about the child and setting them up for success. Blended families have great benefits as well. There are family members that each parent and each person in that family would be able to build relationships with that they would have never known. Me personally, I've gained 2 more parents, 3 more brothers, and I already have one from my family, 2 sister-in-laws, and more nieces and nephews. It's made holidays more festive, and although they're very different from how my family always did things, it allows for new adventures and new traditions. It has also given 2 of us daughters who were only children before becoming blended. Now they have other siblings and a 3rd sister they would have never had if we weren't together. When I think of being in a blended family, I kind of imagine when I'm using a blender to create things. I put everything in and hope that once it's all blended, it will taste right. However, sometimes that's not always the case. In a blended family, there are so many different ways for things to go right, as well as some struggles. Most blended families do not go from one marriage right into another, so each family unit has started to get into their rhythm. One challenge is to combine those rhythms and work towards what is best for the family that's coming together. In my family, I was a single dad for about 11 years before we became blended. So that was 11 years of holidays, vacations, bedtimes, and just doing what we wanted to do. My fiance was a single parent for about 1.5 years, and with a younger child, they were just starting to get into a rhythm of what worked for them. She also has a ton of family support through her parents living close by, and I had my brother. But then we started to, as she said, not date. She was not feeling like she wanted to date anyone, so each date was called a not date. We were just hanging out, and it was difficult for our already made children to move forward and see changes. In my family, nothing much changed at first, except they moved in, and there was less time for the 2 of us, and more structured time because there was now a 4-year-old coming into our family. There were more family activities and less just hanging out with friends for our oldest daughter. There were times in the past that we didn't care about bedtimes. She could stay up however late she wanted because we were just hanging out. But now we're starting to be incorporated with younger children, so we needed to have bedtime so that the adults could also have some time to connect. Later on, the oldest and the middle started to share a room because of the new baby. So each of them went from having this spacious room to combining them into one room that seemed really small. There were growing pains, and at times they probably liked being at the other house because they had their own stuff and their own space. However, over the years, there seemed to be more sadness when one person would leave to go to the other house. And we always thought this was something that was good because even though it was sad, it meant that they were close and they wanted to have time together. They were learning to count on each other and be there for one another, which would not have happened if we were not a blended family. The excitement over Christmas pajamas, this was not a thing in my family did. It was wonderful to see, and this is something that myself and my daughter would have never experienced if it were not for being blended. So the last challenge I want to talk about is when things are not the same at both homes. Yes, again, it sounds like divorce talk, but it is relevant. See, it's okay for things to be different as long as the child is safe and being loved. It's okay if bedtimes are different. It's okay if one family eats in front of the television on occasions. It's okay for things to be different, because when you become a blended family, everything that you did before is going to change. And change is okay. It's okay for new traditions to happen. It's okay to allow yourself and your children to be loved by people they would have never met. It's also okay for your children to wish their parents were still together, no matter how much they love their step-parent. In the end, we as parents are able to teach children that even through what we both went through as a divorce, that good things can come from the tough challenges. That there are people in this world that will accept us for who we are and where we are in life. Being a blended family means you have more opportunities to learn from people, grow relationships, and do new things. Being in a blended family allows for new adventures, relationships, love, growth through the tough times, and more opportunities to celebrate the good times. So again, I stand before you to say, hi, my name is Stefan Lewis, and I'm in a blended family. Thank you for your time.